7:41. Good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
And it's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is journalist and author Ellie Whelan and former speechwriter Asa Bennett. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Ella, let's start with you, shall we? Net zero, this is in the Observer. It's their front page.
Yes, so, I mean, we've been, in the last round of the paper review, we were talking about all the things that Rishi Sunak is trying to make a success of, whether it's the Northern Ireland Protocol or plans for a new immigration bill. And this is something that's rather embarrassing for the government, which is that some cabinet ministers have been warned that the failure to come up with any policies related to net zero, any concrete plans about how they're going to meet the targets that they themselves have set, means that there could be a legal threat. There actually could be a legal threat against Grant Shapps himself as the minister who's linked to and in charge of these things, because the targets, that there have been no plans announced about how they're going to meet these targets. And I just thought it was interesting because, I mean, obviously that it shows a kind of certain level of incompetence within the government in that they make these announcements net zero by 2030, 2035, whatever it is, and there's very little meat on the bones. But I think also for a lot of people this will be quite eye-opening, because the discussion about net zero and how to tackle climate change has always been at a certain level quite undemocratic. I mean, whether it be the institution of the ULEZ in London, low traffic neighbourhoods, clampdowns on what kind of boiler you can get, all these kind of things, there hasn't been a huge amount of public discussion about whether or not, particularly in a cost of living crisis, paying more money on green levies or having less access to cheap energy and all that kind of thing is a good thing, whether net zero is a good plan. And so to compound on top of that the fact that now there will be another undemocratic process, legal threats to a government about their plans, I think it's not just embarrassing for the government, but I think it shows something of the undemocratic nature of a lot of the discussion about how to balance good quality of life with tackling climate change.
Well, how would you be more democratic, though, in that sense? We don't put everything to a referendum.
No, but I think there hasn't been, some of the changes and some of the announcements that have been made, not just sort of the announcement that we're going to have net zero by 2030 or whatever the year is, which is, within that announcement will, if they get their act together and actually announce some plans, could drastically change people's lives. It could mean that, the way you heat your house would have to change, what kind of car you could drive would have to change, or actually your quality of life could lower, because, in a cost of living crisis, we know that certain things are far more expensive, and we haven't ever had a sort of national conversation about that.
Well, the problem with democracy on that, right, and I get your point, the problem with democracy on that front is there can't be any democracy on this, can there? Because in effect, all the political parties agree.
Well, absolutely.
They might have slightly different policies or whatever, but they all agree.
It's a real problem. And, the Observer quotes Rishi Sunak as talking about the need to cut carbon emissions as a moral duty. So, nobody's sitting here saying, do you know what I'd love to do, set the planet on fire and, let's just not care about Mother Nature. No one's saying that. But we're saying don't turn this into emotional moral duty. This is a political question about how you balance, having a future planet to live in with making sure that people have a good quality of life in the here and now. And I think, it's just, this can't be just poo-pooed away as another policy to be tick-boxed by Rishi Sunak. This is a serious thing that could affect people's lives.
You see, it's why I love having you on, Ella. Because you always bring a perspective that I'd never thought of, which is important.
Yeah, I love it. I love being difficult. That's another way of saying it.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's great. So I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah,
actually.
No, really is. Right, you've both got stories on Sue Gray. So should we start with you, Asa? This is in The Sun, and it's about her son.
Yes, basically, it's the son in The Sun is really, pardon me, somewhat loose-lipped, allegedly, on the campaign trail in Uxbridge, in that he's said to be helping Labour's candidate who wants to oust Boris Johnson come election time, and is also said to be sort of rather mouthing off a bit about, did you know who my mother is? My mother is, Sue Gray. She's the head of proprietary ethics. She's about to go and join Labour, all this sort of thing. And that, crucially, it's rumours, noise is off, but it'll only fuel the rumour mill of Sue Gray's move over to Labour, about whether it's some sort of establishment stitch-up, all very cosy, given that, as we know for the civil service, you are meant to leave your beliefs at the door. She may well then clearly have picked them up again, because, she could have stayed in the Whitehall machinery and waited, if there was to be a Keir Starmer administration, and helped as an official, but she wants to do even more than that, clearly. She made a conscious choice. She wants to go further and faster as a political aid.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, because the argument here, we were talking to Charlie Rowley yesterday, who's Michael Gove's old spad, and he's saying, well, look, of all the dealings he had with her, there was nothing to indicate that she didn't leave her political leanings at the door when she was a civil servant.
Oh, and I'd agree, but it's more when you then think, okay, how has this job been arranged? When for the months and years that she would have been dealing with Tory ministers, poring over all the sort of ethical sort of snags and knowing basically where all the bodies are buried. She has an absolute motherload of intel, no doubt, she could be using for Labour. Officially, the government has to decide whether it's acceptable, how soon she could go over. There could be a delay, a few months, maybe till after the election, who knows? But then you can really bet that all the ways she knows how government operates, the way she's dealt with these Tory ministers up close, that is very useful for the opposition.
Very well. You can see exactly why Sir Keir Starmer would want her on side. I mean, there seem to a lot of people like the government in waiting, and they want someone who's been on the inside.
Oh, clearly. But then, she's the insider's insider. Given that she effectively is the personification of Partygate and Boris's tormentor, it's definitely something that's got the Tories riled. And at the same time, it gives Labour that credibility they want to try and aspire to. But it does really smack of something very sort of cosy and insidery in the same way.
Okay. I hate to say, we're out of time.
Are we really?
Yes, we are.
Too much gabbing on.
So you've got to go. You will be back.
Yes.
You will be back. You can tell us about Greygate in the next one.
More grey to come.
And lots of lovely other things as well. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Actually,